Anyway, welcome. I'm Brigid Harrison, and I'm delighted to welcome all of you, both Montclair State University students, faculty, and staff, to this beautiful facility, but especially members of the community. I would begin, as we always do, if you would be so kind as to take your cell phones out, put them on Do Not Disturb, and stow them in your book bags. I would greatly appreciate that. This is the third Salon Series event we've had this semester. Last week we were joined by the inspirational young activist who happened to be a Montclair State University student, Alana Perez, who's the executive director of March for Our Lives New Jersey. We were also joined earlier in the semester by Monmouth University poll director Patrick Murray. Next week, Modia Butler, who we all know as Mo, senior strategist for Cory Booker's presidential campaign, will join us. And we hope to bring you members of New Jersey 11 for Change and Representative Mike Sherrill later in the semester. Next semester, we hope to be joined by Governor Phil Murphy. So please, if this is your first Salon Series, we would love to have you back. The purpose of the Salon Series is to bring individuals who are influential in the state of New Jersey to campus so that my students can hear from them directly. The question that many students ask of our guests is, how did you get where you are? Because many of our students are first-generation college students. Indeed, many of them are first-generation Americans. Let me ask you, how many of you are first-generation college students? That is, you're amongst the first people in your family to go to college. They often lack the kind of professional networks or professional people who are doing things that they're interested in doing. Many, I believe that it's pedagogically important for them to have access to the stories of those who wield influence in our state. This event, like every other Salon Series event, is a conversation between my guest and I. It's not a public hearing, nor is it a press conference. And all Salon Series are live streamed at Insider NJ, particularly on the Facebook page, and then archived on Insider NJ. In teaching politics, one of the fundamental values that we learn about is the value of civil discourse. That in order to operate in a functioning civil society, we must learn to disagree without being disagreeable. It's certainly necessary for a polity in today's national political climate, and we do that in class every week. We don't agree on everything, but we agree to disagree without being disagreeable. We also learn about the rights associated with freedom of speech and freedom of assembly. And you see how many teachable moments we're enjoying today. In any case, I hope that you all enjoyed today's event. I look forward to seeing you next week to hear from Mo Butler. And now I'm going to introduce Pete O'Neillia from our media partner, Insider NJ.
Thank you. Wasn't expecting applause, but it's much appreciated. As Dr. Harrison said, I'm Pete O'Neillia from Insider NJ, General Manager and one of the co-founders. We're happy to partner with Dr. Harrison in the Department of Political Science and Law at Montclair State University in bringing you live streamed and archived versions of the Salon Series events. You can watch today's and past Salon Series at insidernj.com or on our Facebook page, which is being streamed live right now. I want to thank the sponsors of today's Salon Series, and you can just hold your applause until the end. The Department of Political Science and Law, the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, the Center for Student Engagement, the Political Science Club, the College Democrats, and College Republicans. In addition, many people are working today to make today's events a success. Thank you to Tia Hanks, Marielle Pagan, Isabel Libertario, Lieutenant Tim Fox, Erica Blyberg, and from Insider NJ, we have John Van Vliet, who's doing the live stream, and a close friend of ours, Wendell McQuilla, who's doing a professional recording in the back there, who also happens to be a Montclair grad. So give a round of applause to everybody. So to start, some rules of the game. Like all Salon Series, this is a conversation. Please don't interrupt the flow of conversation with applause or any other reaction. We ask you to remember that this is a university setting and that you're guests in this venue, and scores of students are in attendance so that they may hear this conversation. Now on to the introductions. Dr. Brigid Callahan Harrison, is a professor of political science and law here at Montclair State University. She earned her BA from Stockton University, her master's from Rutgers, the State University of New Jersey, and her PhD from Temple University, where she was a National Mensa Fellow. I didn't know that, very impressive. A resident of Longport, New Jersey, she's a frequent commentator in the print and electronic media, including Insider NJ, on national and New Jersey politics, and is the author of 5 books based on American politics. Mr. George E. Norcross III serves as executive chairman of Connors, Strong & Buckaloo, one of the nation's largest insurance, risk management, and employee benefits brokerage and consulting firms. Mr. Norcross has been the head of Connors, Strong and predecessor companies since he founded the firm in 1979. Mr. Norcross also serves as chairman of the Board of Trustees of the Cooper Health System, Cooper University Hospital, and MD Anderson Cancer Center at Cooper, all of which are in Camden. He served as a trustee of Cooper University Hospital since 1990. During this time, Cooper has been transformed into a top-tier tertiary academic medical center. Launched the Cooper Medical School of Rowan University, the first new medical school in New Jersey in 30 years, and opened the MD Anderson Cancer Center at Cooper. He's a former chair of the Camden County Democrats, current member of the National Democratic Committee, and he's often recognized as one of the most powerful people in the state of New Jersey. Really, I should say he's always recognized as one of the most powerful people in the state of New Jersey. So please give them a warm welcome.
Mr. Norcross. There we go. So let's get to the elephant in the room, if you don't mind. Yesterday, you testified before the Senate committee looking into the state's Economic Development Authority programs. During that time, an activist, Sue Altman, was forcibly removed from the premises. What are your thoughts about her removal?
Well, that was a very unfortunate event to take place. I think most of the people in the room were very surprised when that took place.
I was there, and I was quite surprised.
I was surprised. It was an unfortunate event that probably should never have occurred under those circumstances. I requested myself to speak before the committee, and my view is that anyone who makes that type of request should have been afforded that opportunity. If she had made that request, I presume the committee would have accepted and scheduled a hearing for that purpose, as did many of the others. But I reiterate, I don't think that was something that any of us who witnessed it or saw it or read about it found to be appropriate.
Let me ask you straight out. Did you ask for her to be removed? Did you talk to Senator Smith and say, I don't want her in the room?
No, there were several hundred people in the room who were there, many of whom were testifying before and after me. And I had never met her before. I wasn't sure who she was until after she left the facility.
I'm going to ask respectfully that you allow us to have a conversation and respect the academic space. Thank you so much. I couldn't help when Pete was introducing you of thinking what your bio omits. You're characterized often as the most powerful man in New Jersey, a party boss, who controls 1/4 of the votes in the state legislature. Others, I think you're probably more fond of them, have characterized you as an undeniable blessing to the state of New Jersey. What do you make of all that? Is there any truth in any of these characterizations?
Well, I like the blessing part, obviously a bit more than the other. I think one of the things that I end up suffering from over the course of 30, 35 years is, since the early 1990s, I haven't had a political title. Chairman of the Camden County Democrat Committee, the state party, or otherwise. So I'm referred to by the media in different terms. There are equivalent people in both parties that do what I do, who have titles that are referred to by their title. For some reason, over the years, I've been given an unflattering political title, if you will, and that's one that has never changed.
Let's start talking what I find to be the boring part, and that's about the insurance business. There are many students in the room here studying the entrepreneurial mind. Thank you, Professor Swartz, for bringing them. Can you tell them how did you start your business career and have successfully built your firm to the point that it is?
Well, unlike most of the students in this room who are undoubtedly excelling at their studies, I didn't do so well my first semester in college. And some of the academic leadership at Rutgers and Camden nicely suggested I consider other vocational training. So my studies did not continue much longer. And my late father suggested...
I'm sorry, what were you studying?
I'm not sure I had a major. I was a freshman coming in, but the arts and science school at Rutgers where one of my brothers, actually two of my brothers graduated. And my late father suggested that I consider looking at real estate or insurance and that I go to school to get my licenses, which I did. And I, for some reason, was more interested in insurance brokerage business and had met some people in that profession, and hence I started my business and really never entered the real estate business in an active manner.
So how did you do that? I mean, so you're a guy, I'm assuming you're 18, 19, 20 years old. Your father was a successful labor organizer, but how does an 18, 19-year-old guy without a college degree begin starting this business?
Well, I became associated with and met several people in the business, and one gentleman in particular who was the chairman of a large insurance brokerage firm in suburban Philadelphia took me under his wings. And I became a junior salesperson in their organization, being mentored by him and by others, learning. And when you're in the sales business, which I've been my entire life, you generally have a type A personality and you're not afraid to be assertive and move forward and ask people for things and opportunities. And I was always eager to learn. I had great mentors in life, and I was able to start developing a personal book of business and developing it larger, building relationships, and more entertaining new opportunities.
So fast forward a little bit, if you will, to the 1990s. So now it's late 1980s, early 1990s, and you become heavily involved in Camden County politics. What prompted your decision to enter politics at that point?
Well, I actually became involved in politics when I was fairly young. My father was the president of AFL-CIO in southern New Jersey. My mother, who was from the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee, was one of the few Democrats in East Tennessee and was very interested in Democratic politics. And my mother actually became a district leader in the town I grew up in, Pennsauken Township in Camden County. And from a very young age, 16, 17 years old, my brothers and I would help my mother on election day as she was supervising the 28th district, I think it was, in Pennsauken back then. And watching my father over the years as an organized labor leader and interacting with the Building Trades Council and other manufacturing and service unions, I became fascinated with those that he would interact with. My father had a habit of, from a very, very young age, I'm the oldest of four boys, of taking two of us to many, many business meetings that he would have on the weekends. And he would have us dress nicely in a jacket and tie, and we would sit quietly in meetings. And he would tell us, just learn and listen, which is something we did regularly. And we all enjoyed it, every one of us. We used to want to be invited to these meetings. So at a very young age, I met a lot of people in government, whether they be governors. I have a picture when I was a little tot with Governor Hughes.
Did you do that with your son?
Yes, I did, and my daughter. And did the very same thing and told them, as my father told me, you'll learn a lot by listening and watching, and you'll learn how to judge people based on what they say and how they may act. And Brian Hughes is the county executive in Mercer County. I've sent that picture to him with his dad and me many, many times. The same is true with Governor Byrne. When I was a bit older, and Tom Byrne and I are junior, about the same age. And I showed him pictures after my father passed away of his dad and me and my brothers together, and Senator Case when he was a U.S. Senator in New Jersey, Senator Williams when he was here. I can go back many, many years with state legislators and mayors and other.
So politics is in your blood.
Well, very much through my father and my mother.
So now you're a grown man, and it's 1990, and you decide that you're going to be formally active in politics. What prompted that?
Well, I actually got more or less my start when I became very close friends with a young fella named Randy Primus, who was then the city council president in Camden. And he was the person who became the city council president in a compromise government formation in Camden after some of the riots and unrest in the early 70s. He and I became really close friends. And he went on to become the first African-American mayor of Camden, and somebody who I supported back when he had a contested race in the late 70s and was mayor through the early 80s and then joined the Florio administration. And that was my first entree into formal politics in the city of Camden. I then became active in county politics. Governor Florio, or Congressman Florio at the time, in 1989 was running for governor again, and I became the Democratic chairman in Camden County, along with then my partner, Congressman Rob Andrews, who became the freeholder director of Camden County. We were both in our late 20s, I guess, at the time.
So you grew that organization into a relatively formidable force that I would consider to still be growing. One of the things that you're kind of recognized for is selecting talent. So talk to us a little bit about how you do that. You recognize someone who might make a good freeholder candidate or a good assembly member. What does that look like?
Well, I think one of the things that I learned in my business career is to surround yourself with people that are smarter than you, people that have extraordinary talent. And early on, meeting somebody like Randy Primus or Rob Andrews were people that were much different than most people you would have found in public office at that time. They were extraordinarily well educated. They were young, they were energetic, they were full of ideas. And what I learned from that experience and my business experiences is when you're attempting to persuade the public to support somebody, you need to have a candidate that they can embrace, somebody who can stand on their feet, speak intelligently, and do the job properly that's going to entice the voters to support them. In addition to that, back before it was interesting for many people, Camden County became a very, very aggressively recruiter of women and minority candidates for office. I think Camden County was the first county in the state of New Jersey to have a majority of its freeholder board as women. We recruited women for the legislature, African American, Latinos, others, to run for office. And in many places across the state, that was not happening. And today, we probably have a much more diverse group of legislators, members of our Board of Freeholders, and others. But one part of the foundation that was always extraordinarily important was finding talent, recruiting talent. After the 1990 debacle in New Jersey, where Democrats were literally routed throughout the state in 1991, I was chairman at the time. And I decided that we need to seek some new people running for office. So I decided to send a letter to 90,000 Democrats in the county, asking for citizens, not politicians, who wanted to run for office. And we ended up recruiting people like John Adler, who was a young attorney, who was aspiring to run for council in Cherry Hill. People like Jeff Nash, who was a young lawyer, never involved in politics. A fellow named Jim Beach that was a high school coach, that today is a senator from Camden County and has a long and distinguished record. And we were able to attract a lot of people who largely indicated they were never asked to get engaged in politics. They felt that was a closed club. So we were able to recruit a lot of new, younger people to bring in, and with great diversity.
So talk a little bit, if you will, about how to run an election, right? So you still are involved in that. getting us, now you've recruited a qualified candidate, get us through to election day?
Well, I think the most important thing is to have a candidate who is largely free from spending time raising money. For those of you that have been involved in federal politics, probably a third of a member of Congress's time is raising money. In some cases, probably 50% of their time, which makes it very difficult to do what you've been elected to do. And if you're in the House of Representatives, that's a 2-year cycle, meaning you're in constant campaign mode. So one of the things that I assured our candidates from the very beginning was that their responsibilities of raising money were non-existent. That the Democratic Committee would raise the money to run the campaigns, and they would do the retail politics necessary to be successful. I would say another key ingredient of any campaign is great research. Who are you running against? What is the background of your own candidate? Being certain that your candidate does not have any liabilities that voters are going to find offensive. Many call it opposition research, and it's something we have practiced very effectively for 30 years. Having candidates touch the flesh. To this current election season, the thing I would encourage people to do the most is to knock on doors of residents, because it doesn't happen anymore. And when somebody in public office knocks on the door of a citizen, generally speaking, the person is surprised to get that knock on the door. And when they're finished having a conversation, they'll end up telling their neighbors, they'll tell their family, they'll tell others. Obviously, back in the late 80s, early 90s, I pioneered the use of network television for county and legislative races, something no one had ever done.
Incredibly expensive.
Very expensive. Back then, when you ran a large-scale campaign on Philadelphia Network TV, John Adler's Senate race in 1991, we spent an astonishing $350,000. A race like that today would be $10 million.
So, one of the more modern advents that has been successful in Camden County has been vote by mail. How, particularly with the changes in the state law, how have you used vote by mail to help your candidates?
Well, I think vote by mail has in Camden County probably 65,000 individuals that receive their ballot automatically for every election. That would include Democrats, Republicans, and otherwise. It's long been my belief that government need to make voting much easier. People today have difficult times with their lives, their family, their work schedules, and otherwise. And when you have a presidential election, when the lines are long, sometimes people have difficulty voting. And a number of years ago, the legislature, in its wisdom, expanded vote by mail, which was really an expansion of an absentee ballot program, which back then required specific reasons why you couldn't go to the polls and vote. Vote by mail today requires no such thing. In most counties, you return your ballot, postage paid, to the county clerk. And clearly, in Camden County and other counties in the state where this is aggressively utilized, voter turnout has increased dramatically. And election turnout in Camden County in some years is 50% vote by mail, 50% machine. Probably 5 years from now, we'll be voting off our iPhone with our fingerprints. That's probably where this is all heading, and voter turnout will increase dramatically.
I mean, we've seen increased voter turnout since the implementation of this law, both in the 2018 and even in this election year, where in some places like where I live, vote by mail determine the outcome of the election. So much has been made of the acrimony that exists between you and Governor Murphy, a fellow Democrat. Yesterday, you testified, as you noted, at your own request before a state Senate committee charged with evaluating New Jersey's tax incentives. And at the same time, Governor Murphy has endorsed your brother for Congress and released funding for Cooper University Medical Center. It's all rather baffling. In your view, is there a thawing in the relationship between you and the governor? Is he getting better at his job, as a recent op-ed suggested? What's the deal with that?
Well, if you look at the history of the relationship, Steve Sweeney, who my family and his family grew up together in the same town, chose to run for governor several years ago. Steve wasn't successful. He returned as the Senate president. When people tend to run against each other for office, sometimes it doesn't work out in which they're particularly friendly, give or take. Unfortunately, when Governor Murphy, or candidate Murphy at the time, became the presumptive Democrat nominee, Steve Sweeney encountered an unprecedented assault from the New Jersey Education Association, spending $10, $12 million against his reelection in 2017.
The most expensive legislative race in U.S. history.
In U.S. history. And Steve was not comfortable with the position that then candidate Murphy and some of his folks took at the time. And we were in a battle royale. And as my friend, as someone I grew up with and supported for many, many years, I supported his candidacy. And fortunately, Steve won 60-40 in that election. And as tends to happen after elections are over, people tend to remember what may have happened to them during the course of that period. So that relationship with then Governor Murphy did not start off particularly well. At that point in time, I was not terribly engaged in the gubernatorial election at all. I was involved in Steve's reelection. Governor Murphy was going to win election handily. That was pretty obvious on everybody's part. And I was not really engaged at all. And Steve returned as Senate President, and there immediately became disagreements between both houses of the legislature and the governor over proposed fairly massive tax increases across the state. The General Assembly rejected that in the first budget, and the relationship, at least at a legislative level, deteriorated substantially. So my involvement in this between Steve and the governor has largely been something that has occurred as a result of that election for the state senate, or re-election rather, and Steve's re-election as the Senate president. And also at the time, the challenge that took place for the new Speaker of the General Assembly.
So how is it now?
We're making progress. I think the governor recognizes that my interests at this point in my life and my career are Cooper University Healthcare and MD Anderson Cancer Center and the renaissance that's going on in the city of Camden. And he visited Camden on any number of occasions when he was a candidate, applauded the work we were doing. He and I spent a fair amount of time before he became governor talking about urban renaissance throughout the state, whether it be Newark, Trenton, Camden, Atlantic City, Patterson, and other places. Was very interested in learning how urban schools could be turned around in a way that had been exhibited in Newark and in Camden in widely acclaimed ways, like in 2015 when President Obama visited Camden and pointed to the city as being a symbol of hope for America in terms of public safety and public education. So we had a very good discussion about things that could happen and would happen, but it's happened many times in business or politics. When you're associated with a particular person or group of people, you may tend to get grouped into that group of people on a regular basis, and it becomes the good hats and the bad hats. And it's regrettable that these kind of circumstances exist. It seems to me as we all look at Washington, D.C. every day, if it's an idea that a Democrat has, Republicans hate it. If it's an idea a Republican has, Democrats hate it. In the last number of decades, we've seen a deterioration of the way in which people talk to each other, work with each other. They seem not to be able to even walk into a room together and have a discussion. And I largely attribute that to the extremes of both parties, because it started with the Republican Party and the Tea Party, where the Tea Party really hijacked the leadership of the Republican Party and was able to threaten those that didn't subscribe to their views with primary fights. Now what's happening in the Democrat Party is the same thing. The left of the Democrat Party is in a position of exerting its influence in significant ways, in many ways appropriately. But unlike New Jersey, and probably unlike virtually every county and municipality in our state, public officials are having a very difficult time sitting down and talking to each other and reasoning together and figuring out how to make things work. It's no secret that over the course of 8 years of the Christie administration, there was tremendous bipartisan agreement in urban changes in our entire state. Cory Booker and Governor Christie worked hand in hand. People in Camden City, Camden County, Dana Red, the mayor of Camden, worked hand in hand with the Christie administration. And by anybody's estimation in both these municipalities, education is significantly better than it's ever been. And so has public education, so has opportunity. There's a lot of work to do and a lot of ways to go, but people were able to sit down in a room and have a conversation. And that's the dilemma in Washington. There is no conversation. There's just shouting, I'm against this, I'm against that, fighting, discourse that's going on as we sit here today in a way that's just not acceptable.
Do you have any potential solutions, particularly on the national level?
I don't see a solution. I don't think things are going to change much no matter who's elected president. I obviously hope President Trump is not reelected and a Democrat wins. But unfortunately, in our form of government, you're going to have the same turmoil exist. You're going to have the opposing party, who could be in the majority in the U.S. Senate, in the House of Representatives, opposing policies. And when you have a form of government like we do, that gives our president less power than executive power than the governor of New Jersey has, for example. It's very difficult to govern. It's very difficult to move forward. And even when all three branches of government are occupied by the same party, ironically, that's when the most fighting takes place.
Witness New Jersey.
Witness when the Republicans controlled all houses and the presidency. They couldn't get along with each other in any way, shape, or form. History will teach you that is typical, that there's not the unison, there's not the agreement, there's not the agenda that moves forth. The only time that's probably ever really happened was after President Kennedy was assassinated. And the Democrat Party was united in moving forward with legislation and other initiatives unlike the country's ever seen.
After FDR, too. With FDR. I mean, he was pretty able to. So, I mean, in your view, is what I'm hearing is this kind of desire for almost a form of bipartisanship, at least compromise. I mean, I know that you're a Democrat, but it sounds as if you are advocating for a kind of division within the political parties that people will sit down and talk to each other. Do you think government functions best when we have a president of one party and a Congress of another, or no?
Well, actually, I do. I've practiced bipartisanship for 35 years. Some would say I have better relationships with Republicans than I do Democrats in many, many places. But I'll tell you, results matter. Execution matters. Affecting change matters. And getting results matters. In some ways, people would say scoring touchdowns matter. Chatter and a lot of talk and a lot of screaming tends not to serve the citizenry appropriately. And I think there's nothing wrong with sitting down with people and trying to reason. We have a democracy. No single person makes decisions unilaterally in this state or in this country. And it's important that people sit down and work together and reason together, with the exception of principled social issues. There's virtually a compromise or an answer to virtually any problem that exists. Any problem that exists. During the course of Democrat and Republican administrations in the last 15, 20 years, I've seen compromise. I've seen initiatives move forth supported by both parties, or at least caucuses in both parties, and Democrats likewise. But there's such diversity in a state like New Jersey that you're always going to have a difference of opinion, urban versus suburban, and the like. And I think the most important part that can occur us at times are guilty of not cooperating in a proper manner, but it's like anything else in your family. When you can sit down and talk about a problem, you tend to be able to work the problem out.
Give us an example of one of those principled social issues that you think can be compromised.
Cannot be compromised.
Yes.
Well, I think abortion, is obviously one. There are a variety of others that involve social policies where tremendous debate going on. The legalization of marijuana. In some people's minds, that is something that is forbidden, improper, and highly inappropriate, and personal indecision. Some of the other social decisions and legislations that have been considered, the John Bertuccelli's bill, the right to die bill, I think they termed it, is a manner of ending life when there's a terminal illness. There are those that on religious grounds believe certain things. And I think it's appropriate not to have debate and discussion with individuals that have religious views that are in their uncompromised. I just don't think you should ask someone to do that. But generally speaking, those are remote instances.
Right, exceptions, right. So let's change tactics for a little bit. In the olden days, when newspapers dominated, you said, never sue someone who buys ink by the barrel. For a time, you were the person who bought ink by the barrel when you were co-owner of the Philadelphia Inquirer. How does that inform your view of the media, particularly today, when ink doesn't really matter too much?
Well, that's true. I got a chance to see up close and personal the other side of what I had experienced for many, many years. I became interested in acquiring the Philadelphia Inquirer and Philly.com when a friend of mine in New York, regretfully, his firm bought the debt of the previous owner of the Inquirer that bankrupted it. And he thought he was buying it smartly at $169 million. The prior owner paid $545 million, and I ended up buying it for $55 million. Now, I bought it for a business reason. I believe that Philly.com was the hidden asset of the Philadelphia Inquirer. And I didn't think that the management of the Inquirer and its parent company had used that in the best business fashion to promote the ever-changing moments that we were all experiencing. Ironically, at the time, one of the junior executives at Philly.com was a guy named Steve Alessi, who became frustrated when he was not made president of Philly.com and went on to become the president of NJ.com. And he has done an incredible job in transforming NJ.com into the preeminent online news outlet, not only in New Jersey, but starting to be in eastern Pennsylvania, if you can believe that.
In addition to Insider NJ, which is our sponsor.
Of course.
So
what I realized as a part of the business, and I had the advantage of being an outsider, not being as part of the print publication for years and years. And when I first walked in, I equated it all to, if I gave insurance away, the business I'm in, for free, I'll be out of business pretty fast. The newspaper business gave their content away for free and couldn't figure out why they started losing money. And what happened was something that's never happened in the history of newspapers in the country. Advertising revenue slid below circulation revenue about 7 years ago. And newspapers were existing merely on circulation revenue. When people were in fact getting their information online today for free. They didn't have to pay for it. With the noticeable exception of the Wall Street Journal, that never gave its product away for free, and several other publications in the country that refused to give away its content for free. Obviously, that was not something that could be reversed over time. The population that still reads the paper edition tend to be older population. So in New Jersey and in Philadelphia and eastern Pennsylvania, you still have a large circulation rate as compared to other cities in America. But that eventually is going to evaporate. What I tried to do was transition it to a replica edition online and to the online version that NJ.com has so successfully put into place. It's always going to be a challenge going forward. There are so many different outlets for information today. There's not just like there was when I was a kid, NBC, ABC, CBS, Walter Cronkite, Tom Brokaw. These people are, don't exist anymore. Most people can't even remember who the anchors are in their local stations.
How many of you watch the nightly news, the national nightly news, more than twice a week?
Well, that demonstrates the obvious point. So I was looking at the Inquirer as something that could be transformed into the next edition of news and information. But unfortunately, what's occurred, in part because the business of news became the number of clicks that happened as a result of the journalist's written document. And it became something that became almost more of entertainment than it did of pure and simple reporting of the news. In many ways, it became making news. And this was not just traditional print publications. It became the case of virtually every news site, whether it be news, sports, entertainment. Those who owned those sites had to find ways to get people interested to click on, because the only way they made money was through the advertising and how many eyeballs looked at what was being produced. And that is a gigantic challenge to be able to maneuver. Particularly when I saw about 3 hands go up tonight that watched the evening national news at 6:30. Some of us, my age, every night we watch the local 6 p.m. news and the 6:30 national news. We wouldn't miss it. It's the only way we got our news. Today, it's completely irrelevant. And each publication is competing with the next for clicks, eyeballs, and otherwise to drive revenue to continue paying for what the journalists are intended to do.
Thank you. So in looking back over your professional life, what are you the most proud of, and do you have any regrets?
Well, let me start with what will be my biggest regret in life. We started about 10 years ago. When I say we, the religious community, the leadership of the not-for-profit community, the business community, government officials at the city, county, and state level, in attempting to do something that hasn't been done very well in all of America, which is to take and revitalize what was then termed as America's most dangerous and poor city, Camden, New Jersey, into a renaissance. For the last 10 years, that has been largely a community effort that's been supported far and wide. We've engaged the community purposely and regularly, because they are the ones that know what kind of schools they want, what parents want in way of choice for their public education, public safety, the way they want their recreational programs, the manner in which social services and others are produced for the community. And thus far, we have done a fairly good job of taking Camden from one element to a much better element with the arrow pointing up instead of the arrow pointing down. We have a long way to go, and we have many years of work to do and successes to achieve. The best way to point to the fundamental importance of public education and public safety. Without those two pillars, no economic development, no success will ever take place, and no private capital will ever come into any community that doesn't exhibit that, which is the very point that President Obama made when he visited Camden.
That's your regret?
I said it will be my regret if it's not successful.
So you talked a little bit about how you got here. Could you please give the students in the room a piece of advice? If someone were seeking a career in politics or in business, what advice would you give them? specifically concrete steps should they take?
Well, a couple of things, and I'll suggest the things that I would tell my own children, I do tell my children. If you don't ask, you don't get. You need to be bold. You need to be respectful and assertive. But if you don't ask, you're never going to get. Number two, if you have a business and you're recruiting people or you're hiring new staff or otherwise, always attempt to hire people that are smarter than you. I've done that my entire career in every facet of my career. Now that requires you to be secure with who you are, not afraid that that person you're bringing in is going to take your seat and move you to a different place. I've had the blessings in my business career, my career as chair of Cooper University Healthcare, of being able to recruit some really intelligent, brilliant people that have made the entire institution better. I think in many ways I practice the same in government and politics, of trying to find extraordinarily bright people. Over the years, 30-some years I've been running, 35 years campaigns that I've been involved with, I would say when the Philadelphia Inquirer or Gannett paper has made endorsements, 95% of the candidates I've supported have been endorsed by those very papers, starting way back when with a young guy named John Adler, who was running for the state senate against a 28-year veteran who the least percentage that he ever got was 68% of the vote. And John was a hardworking, dedicated, brilliant young man who worked his tail off and was able to be endorsed by the Philadelphia Inquirer, the Gannett paper at the time. And that's been a key of mine, I think, in recruiting people that are a lot smarter than me.
So I'm going to turn to a couple of questions from my students, if you don't mind. The first one is from Gabe Wallerstein. Everyone say hello. So Gabe asks you, how do you deal with the stress that comes with being a party leader in New Jersey? Is it worth it? And how has your feeling about your job now, how is your job, feeling about your job now different from when you first started out?
Well, I'd say I've tried to limit in recent years my active interests. There was a time when I enjoyed buying companies, selling companies, growing the insurance brokerage firm that I started when I was young, getting engaged in all kind of different facets of things. But I realized there's so many hours in a day, there's so many minutes that you can avoid not having sleep. And I had never been someone that slept a lot of hours to begin with, but of course, life becomes stressful each and every day. And particularly as years have moved on, today, the abundance of information that we are privy to, the iPhone that all of you walk around with. I used to enjoy the times when I didn't have a mobile phone. And I still think of times that it would be wonderful to go 5 hours without looking at my iPhone, an email, a text message. We've become a country of instantaneous gratification. We want to know what is going on every minute of every day, and people expect instantaneous responses when we send things, including me, at 3:20 a.m. in the morning. We expect somebody, well, why are you sleeping at 5:15? When I'm the abnormal one, they're the normal one. So the difficulty you have going through all this is the abundance of stress that we all go through with our jobs, our families, life and death circumstances that can come upon any of us at any given time. And as you get older, you tend to want to lessen the stressful moments. And I would say at this point in my life, when I turned 63 years ago, I said if I'm lucky, maybe 3/4 of my life might be over. And that was a sobering thought. I never had thoughts like that until I was 60 years old. And the only two things now that I largely live my life by are health and happiness. And that's it. I've been blessed to be healthy all my life. And God forbid something happens to me or a member of my family, you would give everything you have to cure that circumstance. So you have to realize that these things are blessings that you may have. And the incidental stress moments that we have, or the things we may get stressed over, are things that perhaps shouldn't be as stressful as they are.
Don't sweat the small stuff. So Zakia Jones, you want to wave Zakia? Zakia's over there. She asks, how have you been able to balance both business and politics? Is there ever any tension between the two?
Well, there's only time constraints in that regard. I travel all over the country a lot for business. When I leave here tonight, I'll be leaving to go out of town on a business engagement. So that always becomes difficult. When you're in different time zones around the country, that likewise is very difficult. And if you're an early riser like I am and you're in Los Angeles on business, you're getting up at 1 a.m. to have conversations with people on the East Coast or otherwise. So that creates a lot of difficult times of juggling. And I'm not full-time, obviously, in public service. My two principal things that I do today, my day jobs, as I would call them, as executive chairman of my insurance firm and as chair of Cooper University Healthcare, which probably occupy 80–85% of my time today. So there's always going to be a juggle of what's going on at a given time.
So you don't find particular tension, for example, between politics and your business interests, that you've never had that kind of...
Well, I'm the executive chairman. We have a president and chief executive officer of the company and an entire executive staff that run the day-to-day operations of the company. So I used to be the president and CEO, but as the company grew, expanded its footprint throughout the country, we decided to make these executive changes, particularly since I started devoting significantly more time to Cooper and MD Anderson Cancer Center and the likes of the Renaissance in Camden.
Well, Mr. Norcross, I think that we are out of time. People will be getting up and leaving because class is over. I want to thank you so much for coming to campus. I know this is a busy time in your life, and we appreciate you coming and sharing your wisdom with us.